It all began on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. My husband Jason and I were relaxing in the living room, savoring the peacefulness of the weekend. It was one of those rare times when neither of us had any pressing matters. No work, no responsibilities, just a tranquil day, or so I thought. "Hey babe, there's something I've been thinking about for a while," Jason said, his voice casual, which struck me as odd given what he was about to bring up. I glanced up from my book, curious but unaware of the storm brewing in his mind. "What is it?" I asked. He shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair, a clear sign that whatever he was about to say made him uneasy. "Well, I've been having these thoughts. Fantasies, really." My chest tightened slightly at the word. "Fantasies," I repeated, my voice trembling a bit. He nodded, avoiding my gaze. "Yeah, and I was thinking maybe we could try something different." "Different how?" I asked, now feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. He exhaled and quickly blurted it out. "What if we invited other men into the bedroom?" My heart skipped a beat, and I stared at him in disbelief, unsure of what I had just heard. "Other men?" I repeated shakily. "Not just any men," Jason clarified swiftly, as though trying to lessen the shock. "I've been thinking specifically about 3 black guys. I think it could be something exciting for us to experience together." I sat there stunned, trying to process his words. Of all the fantasies he could have suggested, this was the last thing I expected. Jason had always been the conservative, traditional type. We'd been married for 10 years, and he'd never hinted at anything remotely like this. "Are you serious?" I asked, finally finding my voice. "Completely," he said, leaning forward, his eyes filled with earnestness. "I know it sounds crazy, but I think it could bring us closer. It's not like I'm asking you to do this alone. I'd be there, guiding things. You know how much I love you, right? This wouldn't change anything between us." My mind was racing. On one hand, the idea felt absurd, but on the other, the way he looked at me, as if offering something special, made me feel torn. "I don't know, Jason," I said, shaking my head. "This is a lot to take in." "I get that," he said quickly. "Take your time. I just want you to think about it. I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't believe it could be amazing for us." He left me alone to process everything, and I spent the rest of the day lost in thought, torn between disbelief and curiosity. Why would Jason want something like this? And why on earth was I even considering it? Part of me was angry, frustrated that he'd suggested something so out of the blue, something that could potentially harm our marriage. But another part of me, a quieter, more curious part, wondered what it would be like. The following days passed in a blur. I went about my routine, work, errands, social gatherings, while secretly carrying this unusual thought in the back of my mind. Jason didn't bring it up again, which only made it worse. It felt like this invisible weight was growing bigger each day. Finally, one evening after dinner, I broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said." Jason's eyes were cautious as he waited for me to continue. "I still don't understand why you want this," I admitted. "But I'm willing to at least talk about it. What exactly did you have in mind?" His eyes brightened. He hadn't expected me to be open to discussing it further. "Well," he said, "I thought maybe we could start by meeting them. Nothing has to happen right away. Just see how you feel around them. If it's too much, we can stop." A knot formed in my stomach. Meeting them. 3 men handpicked by Jason to potentially share an experience I never thought I'd even consider. But there was no turning back now, not after I'd opened that door. "All right," I said, swallowing hard. "We'll meet them." The day of the meeting came quicker than I expected. I was on edge, unable to sleep the night before. Jason, on the other hand, seemed unfazed, as if this was just another normal day. I couldn't understand how he could be so relaxed about something that felt so monumental to me. We agreed to meet the men at a small downtown lounge, a neutral place where we could have a drink and chat without pressure. Jason had arranged everything, and I had no idea what to expect. As we walked in, I scanned the room nervously, unsure of how I'd even recognize them. But Jason led me straight to a corner table where 3 men were already seated, talking quietly among themselves. When they saw us, they stood up. My stomach dropped. The men were tall, fit, and carried themselves with an easy confidence. Jason introduced me to each of them: Marcus, Jamal, and Darius. They greeted me warmly with genuine smiles that put me at ease, just a little. Still, the reality of what we were doing began to sink in, and my hands started trembling. "Nice to meet you," I managed to say, forcing a smile as we sat down. The conversation started off innocently enough. We talked about where we were from, what we did for work, hobbies, and other casual small talk. As much as the situation felt strange, I started to relax a little, even though there was still a palpable tension in the air. Every so often, I'd catch one of the men glancing at me, and I'd think back to Jason's proposition. Jason, as always, was steering in the conversation. He asked the guys about their interests, how they felt about relationships, and eventually, the topic began to shift toward the very thing we were all thinking, but not saying. After a while, Jason spoke up. "I'm sure you all know why we're here." There it was, the moment I had been dreading. The men nodded, their expressions growing serious. "Yeah, we talked about it," Marcus said. He was the oldest of the 3, with a deep voice and a calm demeanor. "We're cool with whatever happens, but we respect that this is your call," he added, looking directly at me. I glanced at Jason, who gave me a reassuring nod. This had been his idea, but ultimately, the decision was mine. The pressure felt overwhelming. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to get up and leave, end this before it went any further. But another part of me, a part I hadn't fully acknowledged, was curious. I don't know what to say," I finally admitted, feeling all eyes on me. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Jamal said, his voice soothing. "We're just here to get to know each other. See if there's a vibe. No pressure." His words were comforting, but I could still feel the weight of the situation. This wasn't just a casual night out. There was a real possibility hanging in the air. I knew that the decision I made tonight could change everything. As the evening continued, the drinks flowed more freely, and the tension started to ease. I found myself laughing at Marcus's stories, nodding along with Jamal's thoughts on travel, and enjoying Darius's humor. For a while, it felt like we were just a group of people having a good time. But beneath it all, the unspoken agreement lingered. The more comfortable I became, the more I noticed Jason watching me closely, gauging my reactions, seeing if I was warming up to his idea. A few hours later, Marcus suggested we move the party back to their place. My heart raced. This was the moment of truth. Jason leaned in and whispered, "We don't have to go if you don't want to." I hesitated, feeling conflicted. My mind was spinning, both from the alcohol and the confusion inside me. I knew that if we left with them, there would be no turning back, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. "Let's just go and see where the night takes us," I said, surprising even myself with the calmness in my voice. Jason smiled, and before I could second-guess my decision, we were heading out the door. The cool night air hit my face as we made our way to the car. Jason seemed excited, but I was full of doubt. What if this was a mistake? What if it changed everything? The drive to Marcus Place felt longer than it was. My heart pounded as I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur by. Jason was quiet, but I could feel the tension in his grip on the steering wheel. Neither of us said a word, but the anticipation hung thick in the air. When we arrived, Marcus, Jamal, and Darius were already waiting outside their building. It was a sleek, modern high-rise, and as we walked inside, I felt a strange sense of ease, despite the nerves building inside me. "Welcome," Marcus said, smiling and opening the door for us. As we rode the elevator up, I could feel my thoughts racing. This was it. The moment everything could change. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but backing out now would only complicate things more. The apartment was spacious and well decorated, with large windows overlooking the city. Drinks were already set on the coffee table, and the atmosphere felt surprisingly casual. "Make yourselves comfortable," Darius said, gesturing to the couch. I sat down, trying to calm my racing thoughts, while Jason sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee. We chatted for a while, but there was an underlying tension none of us could ignore. The men were relaxed, but I could tell they were waiting for me to signal if I was ready to take the next step. I wasn't sure what to do. My heart was racing, and I felt caught between the part of me that wanted to stay in control and the part of me that was tempted to let go. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus spoke. "We don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said calmly. "If this isn't what you want, you can say so. We're not here to pressure you." I looked at Jason, but his expression was unreadable. He wanted this? I knew that, but he wasn't going to force me. This was my decision, and for the first time that night, it hit me. No one could make me do something I didn't want. "I don't know if I'm ready for anything physical," I whispered, "but I'm willing to see where this goes." The men exchanged looks, and Marcus nodded. "That's totally fine. We can just hang out. No expectations." Jason smiled at me, his relief obvious. "We'll take it slow," he said softly. The tension eased slightly, and I realized maybe we didn't have to rush into anything. We could explore this together, at our own pace. As the night went on, things became more relaxed. We shared stories, laughed together, and enjoyed each other's company. It felt strangely normal, too normal, given the situation. The men kept things light, never pushing for anything beyond what I was comfortable with, which made me relax further. At one point, Marcus got up to pour more drinks, and Jamal suggested we play a simple game to keep the mood light. Darius agreed, and soon we were playing a silly trivia game, the kind of thing you'd expect at a casual get-together. It was surreal how easily the tension faded as we laughed over ridiculous questions and poked fun at each other's answers. For a while, I forgot about the expectations hanging over us. But as the game continued, there were moments, quick glances, brief touches, shifts in the air, where the underlying tension of what could happen still lingered just below the surface. I could feel Jason watching me, waiting for a sign that I wanted more. The men were respectful, but their eyes told me they hadn't forgotten why we were there. After a while, the game ended, and a quiet settled over the room. I felt the weight of everyone's attention on me, waiting for some sort of cue. I looked at Jason, my heart racing. This was the moment where I had to decide whether to cross that line or step back. Jason leaned in and whispered, "We can leave if you want. No one's forcing anything." His simple, sincere words gave me the clarity I needed. I looked around at the men, who had been respectful the entire evening, and thought about my marriage, my relationship with Jason, and everything we had built together. It wasn't about fear or temptation anymore. It was about what I wanted for myself, for us. "I think it's time we head home," I said, quietly but with confidence. Marcus nodded, understanding. "No problem. It's been great hanging out with you guys." Jamal and Darius echoed his sentiment, and there was no awkwardness, no disappointment, just mutual understanding. Jason squeezed my hand as we stood up. I could see the pride in his eyes. He had wanted to test the boundaries of our relationship, but he had also respected my limits. As we walked out of the apartment and back into the cool night air, I felt relief, but also a strange sense of satisfaction. We had come to the edge and chosen not to step over it. In doing so, we had discovered something deeper about ourselves, about trust, and about our marriage. And as Jason and I drove home in silence, I knew we were stronger for it.